strange and weird situations in my life with a bit of a mythical or paranormal twists. And these stories are gonna be like pure either paranormal experiences, or one is like more about something else there and karma in general. Hello from me and my laptop. I just wanted to say that I wrote down these stories in my native language firstly, and then I've translated them to English, so it's more convenient for me and to keep the moodiness of the story to read them from the list. So the first story is about my dreams, and I will say that this one is like the most vanilla of them all. So, as I've already mentioned on my channel, I have a specific treatment in my family regarding me and anything paranormal, especially when I was a child. And I need to preface, if somebody didn't watch it, like that video, I didn't like it at all. There was too much attention pointing on me when I was a child, thinking that I was a witch or something like that. That was not my jam. That is still not my jam. I don't think it's a jam. the same? I don't think so. Some countries are, but different dates. But in Slavic cultures, we have like 3 days after death, 9 days after death, 40 days after death, and something else, like one more. I just know these three main ones, and each has like a specific meaning. Like the soul is dealing with preparations to go to either heaven or hell, basically to enter the other world. And I later that day, after I had that dream, I've decided to count the days just for funsies, because like maybe. And it was the 40th day that I had this dream, and then basically the 40th day is the last possible day of soul being at earth. Like it's usually even earlier that the soul is going somewhere, and basically before that it's decisions with everyone above. But so that was that, and my mom till this day doesn't know how I know some of the things that she and my father never told me, and it's more personal family stuff that I was thinking for a long time. Like when we had any type of arguments, and I won't be So one evening I stayed awake. What I heard didn't sound like madness. It sounded like work negotiations. I'll give you some tasks. Don't touch the livestock. Bring more water. Clear the apples in the garden. No more work. Leave me alone. It was August. The next morning the orchard was spotless. It was impossible. The day before it had been drowning in fallen apples and leaves. For years, little me thought that Grandpa was so sly and he hired neighbors or his friends to help at night, but he actually didn't have any friends at that time, so maybe it was random men he hired to do this work. Then some time passed and he passed away, and I forgot about these stories and these night talks until university. Around this time I became more interested in Slavic folklore. My university had nothing to do with that, it was just my age. At that time I became more indulged into reading books about that, reading fairy tales, creating my own fairy tales related projects. At that time I've started playing this, I wouldn't call it a game, it's more of a visual novel that you go through by just clicking on the screen, but it was called Scene, and the indie developer's team is called Babanura, and it's basically the story about an old lady and her problem with household spirits that are holding on to her and are not letting her die properly. And basically this woman needed to give them work to stay alive and for them not to torture her, because these spirits, it's basically devils in Slavic folklore, we call them cherti, and they need to have work. Like I wrote that down, that in Slavic belief devils or cherti are malicious spirits. They must be given tasks. Without work they wither, or they begin harming the one they're bound to. If Grandpa wasn't on the phone, then who was he giving work to? And who cleaned the orchard overnight? I still don't know how to comment on that, to be honest, because it might be that my grandfather scared. That was my logic. Like, if I'm scared of sleeping in this house, I need to befriend this evil spirit, so I would know that he won't, or she, it won't torture me. So I will be living happily there, even though I will continue hearing these sounds. Children's book teach you that friendship starts with a greeting. So every time I entered the warm part of the house after the corridor something was off. Not because I was feverish and I was literally sick, but because our teacher, sometimes you can just feel that it wasn't like her morning. She was super angry from the start, telling us that we betray God by our behavior in the bus. And I need to say that this school and the kids that were going to this school and this choir were not rascals. It was like we were the quiet theater kids. We never shouted, like we didn't play at the bus. We could listen to music in our headphones together. We can discuss some stuff from school or other classes, but we were not the type of kids that were deserving this type of behavior. Nobody is deserving this type of behavior from a teacher, but this was so out of this world. And it wasn't the first time she was like that. Then we came to the church that we were attending this Sunday, and we stood in the choir loft. It's like this, it's this elevated space during the service, and we were dressed like cherubs. Like, we had our uniform. It was a basic uniform with, I believe it was dark red, long skirt, white shirt, like flowy one. We had a head scarf, and we were mandatory to wear small heels. I need to remind you that I was 13 during this time. I was not wearing heels in my daily life ever. I was in my tomboy era. I was always wearing sneakers, and so it was not only unusual for me, but I need to remind you that I was sick and I had a fever. 20 minutes into rehearsal, my fever spiked. I could just feel it. I was so shaky and feverish that my friends standing around me held me up. While singing, they were holding me, and the room around me spun. I took off my shoes after the rehearsal so I wouldn't fall down the stairs when going down in between of rehearsals. So, for example, the ceremony starts at around 9 or 8 different times. I don't remember which type of ceremony it was during this specific day, but basically we are rehearsing and doing stuff for at least 2 hours before the main ceremony begins. And we are on the top floor of the church, and the stairs there are so tiny, and they're usually really like vertical. So I took my shoes off so I wouldn't fall while going up and down with a fever, with heels on my legs. I will never forget this moment when the teacher rushed at me and she called me, damn, I wish in English this word is the same as in Russian, but basically she called me blasphemer, like the one that does not obey to God and that God hates for existence. That basically, because I took my shoes off, and mind you, I was wearing socks. Like, it was not my bare feet, and even though if it was, I don't know. So she called me that, and then she told me in front of everyone. It was not just my friends, it were people inside of this church, because it was, I don't know, I've been to many churches singing, and our choir was not singing only in our city and even in our country. We went abroad. I never experienced, like, you know, sometimes you go and the church is in the building process, or it is an old church, and you can just see like tiny birds all around, like fluffing their feathers, like it's okay. But this church was so well put, and it was so almost sterile, like so clean. So that was insane. I remember that I just, after all that and the poop on your face, I just quietly picked my shoes and walked downstairs. Dare I say, I did not perform that day. I sat down with nuns, drinking tea and eating cookies, because I believe my friends who were also seeing this, and the nuns were also seeing this, everyone just silently agreed that, like, even people who did not believe in God, that this was something from above, something otherworldly, punishing my teacher for behaving like that, either to me or like that in the house of God. And she was so quiet after that, I think because she's extremely religious, and she couldn't like understand why this happened to her. I don't know, I won't be jumping into any conclusion on what she was thinking at that time. I honestly don't give a crap about her. So after that I came home, and I think I didn't go to my church choir and in music school for almost a month. Firstly because I was sick and I was bound to bed. I think I got, like, my fever was so high when I came back home. So I was, I don't want to say sentenced, but I was basically at home for a long time. I was feeling okay. It was just the fever that got me. But when I came back to music school,